Wimbledon 2022 is officially underway, and the biggest players are back on the court. Fans were expecting high-octane matches, and that's exactly what we're getting. That's not to say the lead-up to the world's oldest tennis tournament wasn't eventful, though. The weeks before Wimbledon were actually stuffed with tennis drama, and one of the biggest news stories even gave fans a bit of a scare. Here's what happened. First up, an invaded court. Current world number 10 Hubert Hurkacz took on top seed Daniil Medvdev for the Halle ATP grass title, and the Polish player was on a roll for the final in Germany. Spectators were surprised by the results of the game, which ended up in Hurkacz's favor, but that's not what really left them shaking. Nope, the biggest shocker for fans was what happened during the match's first set. A woman crept past security and invaded the court while Hurkacz and Medvdev were playing. That's right, the final was held up by a random court invader. Things came to a halt when the mystery culprit ran onto the outdoor grass court and tried to tie herself to the net. Spectators to the event were obviously alarmed because anything could have happened at that point. We're sure Medvdev and Hurkacz must have been pretty scared for their safety too. Thankfully for them, the rule breaker wasn't able to hurt anyone. Court security took immediate action by chasing after the individual, who was apparently some kind of climate activist. She was chased off the grass but came back pretty quickly from the other end of the court. Her goal was pretty obvious: reach the nets and stage a protest. Fortunately, the guards were able to catch her when she made her return, but it wasn't easy. The activist apparently put up a bit of a fight. Security had to wrestle her to the ground before they could escort her off the premises. Play resumed pretty quickly after that brief scare. Next, we had a month of protests. Believe it or not, the interruption marks the second time this month that something like this has happened. A similar court invasion took place earlier in June, during the French Open semi-final match between Casper Ruud and Marin Cilic. The game was being held at Court Philippe Chartrier in Paris, and what happened there was pretty similar to the stoppage in Germany. Get this, the court invader at that venue was also a climate change activist, and what's more, she actually managed to tie herself to the net. You heard that right. The protester tied herself to the net and brought the semi-final of a major tournament to a dead stop for 10 whole minutes. She entered during the third set, sat down facing a camera, and the fans who were there saw she was wearing a shirt with the slogan, "We have 1,028 days left." 4 members of the stadium court security team had to come in and carry her off the court, and the incident raised a lot of concerns about the security at tennis tournaments. Both women basically walked onto the courts without anyone stopping them. That's pretty crazy, and the fact that it happened twice in the same month at different venues has given tennis enthusiasts a lot to worry about. These protesters were non-violent, but what if someone with a weapon tried to sneak onto the court? That'd be way more dangerous, and it's why fans worldwide have been calling on tennis authorities to tighten up their security. And now for a history of tennis violence. And followers of the sport definitely have a reason to be afraid. One of the worst incidences of violence in the history of the game involved a court invader after all. In 1993, tennis legend Monica Seles was playing off against one of her biggest rivals, Magdalena Maliva, for the Citizen Cup. She was on her way to a win when she was attacked by one of Maliva's obsessive fans. The man literally stabbed her in the back because he wanted Maliva to win. Security stopped him before he could make another move, but the damage was done. Seles had to step back from the world of tennis for over 2 years in order to recover from the event. She was ranked number 1 in the world when the attack happened, so it basically forced her to waste a couple of her prime playing years. That's a tragedy, and fans definitely don't want anything like that to happen ever again. And though that was definitely one of the worst things that's ever happened to a professional tennis player during a match, court invaders are pretty common, especially at the French Open. In 2009, a man from the crowd ran onto the court and tried to charge Roger Federer before being pushed away by security. Stuff like that is exactly what's scaring tennis fans, and the latest incident in Germany is just another reason for courts to start taking security seriously. Let's hope they do. Next, we have the results of the game. Thankfully for fans, Hurkacz and Medvdev were able to pick up where they left off, and the result was a pretty big shock. Number 1 ranked Medvdev lost to the Pole in just over an hour, stunning fans who were expecting him to win. Hurkacz won 2 straight sets and showed off some terrific form to come out ahead. This is just his 5th ATP title, and tennis lovers are hyped to see what he does next. He was a Wimbledon semi-finalist last year, so he might just go all the way this year. On the other hand, Medvdev was pretty disappointed by his performance. He was pretty upset, even yelling at his coach at one point during the game. Afterward, he apologized to his fans for not putting up a better showing. Unfortunately, it's going to be a while before we get to see him play again. Medvedev isn't allowed to compete at Wimbledon because of their ban on Russian players due to the Ukrainian invasion. We'll just have to see how the player bounces back after this setback. Now, in other news, Djokovic comments on his rivals. Novak Djokovic just heaped praise on his two most formidable rivals after his first-round Wimbledon win. And we're pretty sure you'll know who we're referring to. Yep, the player had great things to say about Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer. The big three have dominated men's tennis for the past 20 years, so it makes sense that they would respect each other. After his recent win in Wimbledon, Djokovic became the first tennis player to win 80 singles at all 4 Grand Slams. That's a pretty incredible record, and it makes Djokovic a strong contender for one of the greatest tennis players of all time. The Serb didn't let the glory get to his head, though, and he won a lot of hearts by citing both Nadal and Federer as big influences on his career. The man says he has nothing but respect for his two peers and that squaring off against them is always the ultimate challenge. As a tennis player, you can't get better praise than that. Next, is John Millman headed for retirement? It looks like John Millman might be setting down his racket soon because the Australian tennis player is hinting at retirement. He basically said as much after his loss to Miomir Kecmanovic in the first round of Wimbledon on Monday. After the game, Millman stated that his decorated career might be nearing its end. The 33-year-old thinks his body won't take much more of professional tennis, and that he might be playing his last match pretty soon. The Aussie's been dealing with back and hip problems for a while now, so this isn't really a surprise. For now, the player says he'll attend the US Open in August, but didn't commit to an appearance in the Australian Open after that. He wants to take things one step at a time, and we can definitely respect that. He's the only Australian player who has ever beaten Roger Federer, so the man definitely deserves a relaxing retirement. And now, Andy Murray employs a controversial tactic at Wimbledon. Two-time Wimbledon champion Andy Murray is in the hunt for his third win, and he's begun this year's tournament with a pretty controversial move. The Scot earned a hard-fought victory over Australian James Duckworth, and some of his tactics surprised longtime fans. Though he won the match fair and square, Murray made a controversial move by performing an underarm serve during the match. That's a legal serve, but it's considered a little unsportsmanlike. Murray defended himself after the game by saying he saw Duckworth going further back for his returns, so an underarm serve was the only way to exploit his opponent's deep position. Even though he's used it just twice in his entire career, Andy says he has no problem with the serve. It'll be interesting to see if he uses it again later in the tournament. Finally, Wimbledon boss comments on Russian ban. Wimbledon chief executive Sally Bolton says she has some regrets about the All England club's Russian ban, since it has some pretty adverse effects on players. The ban is only on tennis players from Russia and Belarus, and it includes the current world number 1, Daniil Medvdev. In response, the governing bodies of tennis said that playing in Wimbledon won't give anyone any ranking points since it wouldn't be fair to the banned players. Bolton claims she didn't expect the reaction to the ban to be so harsh, and she's sorry that players are being affected in this way. That said, she's standing by the difficult decision, even though it means players at Wimbledon won't be able to improve their rankings during the tournament. That's pretty sad. That's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.